Next week, I'll have been on stage for 36 years. I started in May of 1983.
You don't know how far you can go until you risk going too far.
You got to do something different. You need to do something transformationally different.
It's not good enough to do nothing. It's not good enough to be the silent majority that allows bad things to go on. It's not good enough to obey man's laws. You must obey God's laws.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Creative Society. And today we have amazing person to interview, Raymond Aaron. He's a motivational speaker and he's author of more than 140 books. Can you imagine? A person who helped so many people to get goals in their lives, to actually achieve goals and become successful people. Welcome, Raymond.
My pleasure. Thank you for introducing me. Thank you for having me on your show.
Happy to have you with us. And my co-host today is Alina.
Hello, everyone, and greetings on Creative Society TV. You know, this is a very special channel. There we unite amazing people all over the world. And our viewers will be interested to know what are your core values and what drives you in life.
My core values are going everything to the extreme. Like T.S. Eliot said that you don't know how far you can go until you risk going too far. And so I am a man who goes too far all the time. And usually I succeed, which means it wasn't too far. But I do everything to the extreme. I'm just giant in my own imagination. I don't mean I'm boastful. I mean, I view myself as huge and powerful and can achieve anything. And from that platform, I've achieved so much. And so that's my number one core value, that I can do anything and that I'm all powerful and all knowing. But please understand, I don't mean that in any boastful way. It's just where I come from. Whereas other people might say, oh, I can't do that, or I'm too old, or I'm just an immigrant, or I'm just a woman, or I'm too young, or I'm broke or something. My feeling is I can produce anything.
But you should be a very brave man. So please give your opinion and your advice there to find that bravity inside.
Where do people find the braveness inside them?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How can we wake it up in ourselves?
Well, unfortunately, your parents and teachers did their best to drum it out of you. If you showed any creativity in school, you were reprimanded for it. You had to give the answers that the teacher taught and that the teacher expects. And if you did something creative at home, it probably looked wrong to your parents. If you decided to take milk and pour it on the table and kind of do fingerprinting or something with milk or cream or jam, your parents would probably yell at you for making a mess. And so, unfortunately, whatever creativity you were naturally born with got very effectively drummed out of you by your parents and your teachers, and even by whatever clergy, whatever religion you are. Most religions say, believe what I say. Don't ask questions. We don't tolerate any questions. You just have to believe. And so, unfortunately, our society does a terrible job at encouraging creativity, encouraging risk, encouraging taking chances, encouraging being creative. And so the best way to overcome a problem is to be aware of it. One of my absolute most favorite expressions is, your unaware is dirty. Your unaware is dirty. And I think people's their unawareness of that they have creativity, but that it's been drummed out of them, they've forgotten that. And now they're terrified to try anything new. People will say, oh my gosh, everybody in my industry is out of work. Therefore, I'm out of work. Nothing I can do about it. And their creativity just stops. And one thing you can do is you can read wonderful books. Another thing you can do is watch wonderful movies. Another thing you can do is watch the movie The Secret. Another thing you can do is listen to great motivational speakers. This is not a self-promotion for me. Go watch Jack Canfield, Robert Kiyosaki, Tony Robbins, all friends of mine. Do something to encourage your creativity.
Wow. I really love this message of self-education. So people should start having faith in them and do this self-improvement, work on themselves. What do you think is the main first step? What is this thing in our heads that prevent us from actually taking action towards self-improvement in the first place?
Well, you were taught in school that the right answer is right and the wrong answer is wrong. And so you didn't dare say the wrong answer. You only put your hand up if you knew the answer was correct. Even if it might be incorrect, you had to know it was correct before you put your hand up. Nobody in school was taught, you know what, just try something. Just come up with some crazy idea and let's see what we can do with it. Nobody was ever taught that. You were taught that you were wrong, you're silly, you're a nuisance, go to the back of the class, go to the principal's office. And so your teacher taught you really clearly, you better know what you're doing. You better not make any mistakes. But talk to anybody who's wealthy. Talk to anyone who is entrepreneurially successful. They will tell you the many, many mistakes that they made. For example, Henry Ford, everyone knows this. Henry Ford named his very first car the Model T. T. Why? Why wasn't it the Model 1? Why wasn't it the Model A? Why T? And the answer is Henry Ford either failed or went bankrupt 19 times. He tried 19 businesses and either closed the doors or they went bankrupt 19 times. And manufacturing an automobile was his 20th attempt. And T is the 20th letter of the alphabet. He named his car after his 19 failures because he, as a great entrepreneur, knew that the failure is your biggest key to success. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is a mandatory requirement of success. Every time I start a new venture, every time I launch a new product, every time I create a new educational program, the first time it comes out, there's lots of things wrong with it. And I can tell by the feedback when people ask me the same question over and over again, I realize, oh, I didn't explain that well. And then I come up with the second version and the third version. But thankfully, I throw out the first or second version because I don't want to see it ever again because it's filled with mistakes. You can't come up with the perfect product first time. You can't come up with a perfect entrepreneurial idea the first time. You just can't. And even if you do by accident, your next idea will have some mistakes in it. And so you have to be willing to fail, and school drums that out of you. School does not want you to fail. Failure is bad, and giving the wrong answer is bad, and getting 49% is wrong. So
that's actually, yeah. Well, Henry Ford also colored the Model T only in black color because it was the fastest color to get ready for the actual coming out of the factory. So I think efficiency is also very important. But I want to come back to the very beginning of your answer when you said that society makes us gives us expectations as to what is right and wrong, and we start having this fear of not pleasing people's opinion about us, right? Not even the right answer, but the right answer according to someone's opinion, some authority like a teacher or the audience. And there was this experiment where people were shown different colors on the board, and people who were participating in the experiment were purposely naming it wrong, not the actual color on the board. And then people who were in the experiment and didn't know what's going on, they were naming it the same wrong color, even though they obviously knew that it's the correct color. So they were lying to themselves. They knew it's wrong, but they were saying a lie just to please other people. And do you think that's what's going on in our society on general level? That
Absolutely. If you ask people why they're taking the COVID vaccine, that it should be a medical reason. They should be saying, well, I've done the research and I've looked at the probabilities, and the probability of harm from the side effects exists. but the probability of getting helped by the intention of the vaccine is better, and so I've chosen to do it. They should talk about medicine, and they should talk about health, and they should talk about probabilities, but they don't. They say, well, I took the jab because I want my job, or I took the jab because my mother forced me to, or all my friends have done it, so I'm doing it. Well, that's the same as saying I'm taking cocaine because all my friends are doing it. People just, they don't think, they just are puppets. Most people are puppets. Most people just repeat whatever they've heard.
And this is actually very interesting, because our last conference was called Creative Society, Time for the Truth, where we tried to expose all the narratives that we have in our heads pushed by the society. Like, for example, the narrative that it's okay to live in the society where a lot of people live in poverty, and we just make it seem like it's okay that we have this tremendous spendings on climate change with no effective progress in any sort of the field. And we just hear the same thing on the news: CO2, CO2, CO2. We're not even researching what's actually going on to our planet. And when we gather all the researchers from different areas of research, we were actually able to gather a picture which is much more complex, much more comprehensive, much more interesting than what we hear on the media when we only see somebody's like corporate interest being shown by the, well, you give a very good example, like we should probably see who profits from this narrative, and then we see kind of what's going on in there. In your example, it's apparently pharmaceutical companies. But I would like to ask you, what kind of values can unite people in a positive way, in a way where we act not out of fear, but out of this need of self-improvement, and also contribute to common good? Because I feel like for every person, it's we want to be successful, but how do we measure success? We measure it by the social acceptance, or some measurements of success, which is financial success, of course, but also contributing to the improvement of the society. What kind of values could bring people together in this desire to make our society more successful in general?
Okay, so the answer to your question is to look at history. And most people don't look at history. They stop reading nonfiction books as soon as they leave school. But if you look back at Nazi Germany, you'll remember that the trial of the Nazis was called Nuremberg, the Nuremberg trials. And the, quote, good guys were saying, and I hope I don't offend any Germans who are listening. I'm not trying to say anything good or bad. I'm just trying to represent history. The, quote, good guys, the winners of the war, were saying, Nazis are bad. You shouldn't do bad things. And the Nazis' defense was, and it sounds really good, is I was just doing what my boss told me. I wasn't bad. I was just doing what my boss told me. And they were. And in an army, you're supposed to do what your boss tells you. Otherwise, you get court-martialed and you get a horrible name, a horrible reputation. And so they had a really good point. They were doing what their boss said. And if they don't do what their boss says, you get court-martialed or you get shot or something horrible. But the judge said, it's not good enough to do what your boss tells you. You must do what's right. It's not good enough to obey man's laws. You must obey God's laws, not a religion, but God's laws. And so today you say to yourself, it's not good enough just to be afraid to say something. It's not good enough to do nothing. It's not good enough to be the silent majority that allows bad things to go on. You must do what's right, not what you're told to do by society or your boss. And so that's the answer. The answer is to look at history. It's not that long ago. It's not that long ago. The Second World War ended 75 years ago. I know that most people alive today weren't even born at the time of the Second World War, but it's not ancient history. It's not 500 years ago. It's not the time of Christ. I was born during the Second World War. So it was my lifetime. And so I'm just inviting people to learn from the recent past, learn the lessons of the Nuremberg trial.
Absolutely. That's so much important, Raymond. You know, all of what you mentioned today if people accept it and we start to do our best really to, self-develop and to see better what is going around us, will give us so many understandings that it will be a good motivation for us to act, to make changes in our society, in our mentality, I would say, in our vision of what is happening around us, because we are kind of blind today. Things are happening around and we refuse to admit that they are terrible. And the strong point of the Creative Society project is that it has already united millions of people all around the world, people of goodwill, people who really want to make that necessary changes so that we live as humans, that there we again value human life, that we again support each other, that we consider each other not from the position of segregation and division, you are of my nationality or of my religion, but we consider each other as one human community, one human family, people living on this planet. So the project attracted so many people already, and today we all together are implementing it all around the world. Still, there are so many people who want to join, but they expect that others will come and bring them the ready result. They say, I want to live in the Creative Society. Yes, of course. How are you going to build it for me? What are you going to do? What would you say here? What would be your answer?
Well, I'll give you my own life experience. I'm a Canadian and I'm Jewish. And though Jews are fairly well respected in the world, there's also a lot of prejudice against Jews. And when I'm giving speeches in the United States, Americans would rather learn from Americans. Americans think that everyone is either American or an outsider or an alien. And so I was afraid when I was speaking in the United States to admit that I'm Jewish and certainly admit that I'm Canadian. I wanted them to think that I was a normal white Christian just like them. And I hid it, and I was embarrassed that I hid it. And I'm suggesting that my embarrassment and my fears are similar to the people that you're talking about, who want somebody else to do the Creative Society for them while they just do their job. And one day I said, you know what, Raymond, get over yourself. Just swallow all that nonsense that you made up, that they won't like Jews and that they only want white Christians and they only want Americans. Just get rid of all that crap. And so the next time I stood up to speak, I said, by the way, I've never said this in the United States, and I'm afraid to say it, but I'm going to say it. I'm Jewish and I'm Canadian. And there was a silence for a while, and then they applauded. I said, well, that went easier than I thought. And then I referred to it a couple more times in my talk, and they just laughed it off because they didn't have all those issues. They were just in my mind. And I'm suggesting that the people that you want to help, that you want to advise, you want them to kind of turn on to doing it themselves instead of hoping that others will do it for them. I'm suggesting you say to them, what is it that you fear? And then ask them if it's real. Because most fears aren't real. Most fears are just not real.
Yeah. Again, we came back to fears, right? That's something which blocks us so much inside us. But let's again try to free ourselves from these wrong understandings by talking about the project Creative Society. So this is all human project, and as I mentioned today, it's been implemented by millions of people from 180 countries. And it all started 10 years ago. Then volunteers, the very first pioneers of the project Creative Society, decided to conduct a social survey. They started to go out to the streets, to the events, to their offices, schools, and they started to ask people or family members and people they knew in what kind of society you would like to live in. Can you please give a description of such a society that you could really evolve, you could feel free. And people started to give their answers, and based on those answers, the 8 foundations of the creative society were formed. But before we come to that point, I wanted to ask you, what is creative society for you? How do you envision the world where you would feel really happy, comfortable, and the fair world, I would say so?
Okay, it's an easy answer for me. The world that I would like to live in is a world in which everybody is doing what they love for their work or their charity. They're doing what they love and earning well doing it. I would like to live in a world in which everybody is contributing vastly. They're doing what they love and making a big difference. Most people aren't doing what they love. Most people aren't making much money. A lot of people are unemployed. Most people are afraid. And I want to live in a world in which everybody is doing only what they love. I mean, even as far as whether they like to take the garbage out. I mean, they do only what they love. And that's how I construct my life. There's certain things, you call them household chores, that I love doing. I love making the bed in the morning. I love putting out the recycling. I love putting out the compost. I live on an acreage with a luxury log cabin. You can see it behind me. And I do only those chores at home that I love doing. The chores that I don't love doing, I don't do. And one time my wife complained, "Oh, so I have to do the dirty work?" I said, "No, you only do what you love." And she said, "What about the other stuff?" I said, "Either the other stuff won't get done, or we'll hire a cleaning lady to do it, or something, or we'll just ignore it. But I only do what I love."
One thing I wanted to ask you and to talk to you about is actually purpose. I feel like the thing that you mentioned multiple times, when people live a miserable life, usually I would say these people lack in purpose because they have a lot of energy. Each one of us has tremendous amount of energy. But if it's not applied to a purpose, then it's just wasted. But when we look at our society, do we have a purpose as a society generally? What do we actually live for? What's the goal? And when I started thinking about it, I realized there is no such goal. What would you think could be such a goal that actually could unite people instead of listening to those, as you mentioned, the religious leaders and the commercials on the TVs that try to separate us? Politicians, again, you said my product is better. Each politician is claiming that his political platform is going to give a change, but none of them ever does. Like, how long would we keep playing these stupid games and win stupid prizes until we realize that we need a purpose, not only in personal life, but as a society as well?
So before I had a purpose, for the first 39 years of my life, you have to understand, I have a Mensa IQ. That's the top 2% of IQ in the entire world's population. I've been rated as a genius in mathematics. And the very first book that I wrote at the tender age of 22 was a calculus textbook that was made compulsory at the University of Toronto. So I have a big, giant IQ, big, giant brain. And with all that brain power, for 39 years, I produced a garbage life. I was $100,000 in debt. I was 50 pounds overweight. My wife had just divorced me. My boss had just fired me. I was depressed. I was doing every single thing wrong. And then, honestly, I heard a voice in my head that said, "Raymond, you're a teacher." And I can't prove it because you didn't hear it, but I heard it. And I started doing everything I could to become a teacher. And suddenly my life changed. My income went from, let's say, $50,000 a year to $500,000 a year in 1 year. And then it's gone wildly up since then. The number of people I helped up to age 39 was, 10 people a year, like friends of mine that I helped. And now millions of people a year, millions. And so I do way better in life in terms of earning myself, but way better in life spiritually. I feel wonderful, and way better in terms of the vast number of people that I help in so many ways. And so my purpose of being here this lifetime as a teacher, I didn't realize until age 39. And the strange thing is that most people are going to be here for, let's say, 80 years. That's a long time, 80 years. And they never ask why they're here. If you ask why they bought that car, they'll tell you, or why they went to this island on their vacation, they'll tell you. But if you ask, why are you here this lifetime for 80 years, they've never thought about it. If they haven't thought about that, then they haven't thought about their purpose. And if you live a purposeless life, you'll have to come back next life and do it again. And so my purpose is being a teacher. And every single thing I do, including this interview, is for teaching. Now, I don't earn any money at this interview. I'm not selling anything. I'm not even telling you, go to my website and download this book and then secretly get their email address so I can promote something to them. I'm not doing any of that.
And Raymond, this is amazing because it gets us to the point where your life changed when you decided to create, when you decided to have a purpose that serves to other people, but makes you so much more successful. Like this is actual you improving other people's lives, and that makes you successful. And that's the only purpose each one of us can have, like actually do something beneficial for the others. And that creates you tremendous amount of wealth and success. And here we comes to this point where people live in consumeristic life, in selfishness, usually live miserably. And people who choose to serve to the others become tremendously successful people. How do we make this idea popular that we should have a purpose not to consume, as this consumeristic society tells us, buy, new model, new phone each year, new car every 3 years, new loan, new something, into actually opening up in creativeness, create for the others, make human life better, and you will be so much more successful and you will achieve so much more, even financially, even as a just on level of personal happiness, creativity, be creative, create, live in a society where you encourage others to create, where each one of us doing something for the benefit of the others. How do we send this message out? How do we make this idea popular?
Well, luckily, this is the best time there's ever been in the many thousands or hundreds of thousands of years that man has stood upright, because we have the capability almost for free to have a giant dissemination of our ideas and therefore have the possibility of a giant impact. There has never before been, up to even 10 years ago, there's never before been social media. And now you can make a huge impact with social media, and you can make a movie, sometimes at a very low cost, that could suddenly go viral. Then it'll open up gigantic opportunities. And so it's the best time ever. The best time ever. Just be creative, come up with something interesting, and it'll go viral, or at least you hope it'll go viral. At least you have a chance. 50 years ago, you couldn't speak to more than 10 people at a time.
I agree. That you mentioned just now, we see already, because so many scientists and creative people started to join the platform Creative Society, and today in different interviews, they share their ideas on volunteer basis about how they can make that impact for a better world for everyone. And that's amazing that it's viral. It goes so quickly to other people. And this is why also we conducting these interviews and roundtables, international discussions, and of course, international conferences and global forums. And during these events, we don't only talk about our chances to improve and to evolve, but we are also talking about crisis, because there are so many crises today in the world. And as we mentioned before, we don't really see them. We pass by poverty, we pass by slavery, we pass by huge climate change, and so many people are losing their homes. We pass by many crises because we believe they don't concern us, but they affect everyone. Therefore, we think that all this process also consists of first telling the truth, seeing what is happening in the world, and then gathering together that amazing people who can also bring their vision, their understanding, their experience. And thank you so much for joining us today and for really sharing your opinion, your vision, your experience, giving that those key points which can really help everyone overcome fear and grow personally and grow as a society. And I invite everyone to participate in our international discussions and also, of course, watch our conferences on the topic of global crisis. Last conference, Global Crisis, Time for the Truth, was interpreted into 100 languages by volunteers from all around the world. And we are inviting all of you to join us on the 7th of May, 2022, for the global forum. We are people, we want to live. So Raymond, thank you so much for being with us today. Tali, thank you for your amazing questions.
Thank you so much, Raymond. Thank you for these inspiring words for the interview and for such a beautiful examples of how exactly each one of us can make life better. And thank you, Alina, for co-hosting today's interview and for wonderful questions. I would like to ask you, are there any final wishes? What would be your message to the humanity? What would be your message to each one of the people who's watching this interview right now?
The best thing that you can do to make a gigantic change in the entire world is to simply do more of what you love and less of what you don't love. I wildly love what I do at work and at home. I only do chores at home that I love. I only do chores at work that I love. And all the other things are done by somebody else or they just don't get done. And so my best advice to you, my best idea for you to make a giant difference in the world is to make a giant difference inside your own life and inside your own heart. Start doing more of what you love and less of what you don't love. Start thinking more of other people and less about yourself. Stop thinking about whether you're going to earn enough money to pay rent. Start concentrating on providing greater value, because you're not paid per year based on the fact that you have a degree or some rule or something like that. You're paid ultimately based on how much you contribute. How much you contribute. I get paid well because I contribute a lot. And you will earn way better in terms of making more money coming in and making more love coming in and making a greater society and a more creative society when you switch to doing what you love and shining a light on the world. A candle is not diminished by lighting another candle. When you start lighting other candles, you will not be diminished. Your energy will not be depleted. Your income will not go down. When you light lots of other candles, your candle will be just as bright, hopefully way, way brighter. Thank you.
Thank you so much for these inspiring words. It's amazing. And for everyone who's hearing this, I would like to ask you to encourage people to actually change something in their daily life. And what could be the simple steps that each one of us can do to make the world around us better? How can we notify people in the shortest period of time about this possibility of changing our world from consumeristic, in which we live right now, where money is above everything, into creative format of living, creative society, where human life is the highest value?
Now, how can you do it? How can you do something in your own little home or your own little community or your own little office and make a giant impact? Well, today is the actual perfect day to be able to do that, because there has never been before 10 or 15 years ago, there was never been social media. With social media, you can make a message for free, and if it goes viral, millions of people can see it. There was recently a landmark video on YouTube that had 10 billion views. 10 billion views. So for free these days, you can get your message out to millions and millions of people, or maybe just thousands or hundreds, whatever is your desire, whatever is your capability, whatever is your energy level, however high you are on the tone scale. But just do it. Do it. Make the decision. Step forward. Get into the game. And when you do, you might be startled at how wide your message goes out into the world.